and the Senators of the Republic.
Four, five, six, 11, 12. The 23rd session of the Senate and the second regular session of the 19th Congress is hereby called to order. We should be led today in chamber in a prayer this chamber by our dear colleague Senator Bato de la Rosa, but he's not in it now. Let's put ourselves in the presence of our Lord and do a 1-minute silent prayer. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for the day today. Amen. Please remain standing for the singing of the national anthem, which will be led by the De La Salle Zobel Strings, and after which they will be singing their winning piece in Europe, Tatlong Awiting Pilipino, a medley of songs of Calesa, Rosas Pandan, and Bahay Kubo. Bravo. Maraming salamat to the De La Salle Strings. Remember that they're all just in high school. And amazing musicians. Session suspended. We'll ask everyone to settle down. Majority Leader, before we recognize our De La Salle Sobel Strings on their achievement, we'll just ask the Secretary, please call the roll of members.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Angara, Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Escudero, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Legarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, the Senate President.
With 21 senators present, the Chair declares presence of the quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, before we proceed, and again, we'd like to thank the De La Salle Sobel Strings led by its conductor, Mr. Leopoldo Sumera Jr. And of course, the proud parents are also here of the award-winning group of young musicians. Brother Martin Selner, Miss Ruby Ramos, the school principal, Mr. J.J. Jacinto, and Miss Lynette Feliciano. Also with us, Mr. President, is Congressman Kimer Olaso of the 1st District of Zamboanga City. Also with us, guest of this representation, Mayor Marilu Murillo of Calapan City, Oriental Mindoro, with Councilor Magsusi of Oriental Mindoro, and Alan Umali, our good friend. Mayor Tita Reyes of Malvar, Batangas is also here, guest of Senator Ejercito. Guest of our dear colleague, Senator Cynthia Villar, the World Mission Society Church of God, ACES Youth Volunteer Group, led by Mr. Michael Lee Gunhang of Las Piñas, and Phil Park of Parañaque. We welcome all of them in this August chamber, Mr. President.
Yes, welcome to your Senate, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this juncture, with the consent of the body, I move that we consider proposed Senate Resolution number 758. This is the resolution commending and congratulating De La Salle Santiago Sobel Strings Ensemble. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, I move that we recognize our Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Hontiveros, to deliver her sponsorship speech.
Our distinguished Deputy Minority Floor Leader. Before we do that, may we ask the Secretary to read the
Title of the measure, Mr. President.
Please proceed, Secretary.
Resolution commending and congratulating De La Salle Santiago Zobel Strings and Sound for winning the Gold Award at the 2023 Bratislava Youth Musical Festival Competition and fourth place at the 15th Summa Cum Laude International Youth Music Festival held in Europe.
Yes, we'd now like to recognize our distinguished Deputy Minority Floor Leader, Senator Risa Hontiveros, to sponsor the measure.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. It is with great joy and pride that I stand here today to sponsor Senate Resolution 758, congratulating the De La Salle Sobel Strings Ensemble for their outstanding performances in 2 international youth festivals in Europe last July. Last July 1st, the group received an outstanding rating, winning them the 4th place at the 5th Summa Cum Laude International Youth Music Festival in Vienna, Austria, in which they bested other youth ensembles from Australia, Austria, Canada, China, Italy, Puerto Rico, Singapore, Taipei, Norway, Netherlands, Spain, and the USA. Not only that, a week later, the team won the Gold Award at the 2023 Bratislava Youth Music Festival competition at the Slovak Radio Concert Hall in Slovakia. The DLSZ Strings is composed of 34 outstanding young kids who led us earlier in our Pambansang Awit and serenaded us with their concert piece, which is a medley of Filipino songs. They are also accompanied here in the gallery today by the DLSZ administrators, including Vice President Rafi Reloza, the Lasallian brothers, particularly Brother Martin, and their parents, including the Chief of Staff of our colleague, Senator Cynthia, their parents who gave them their unwavering support for these kids to be recognized on the international stage. Mr. President, although I am a Blue Eagle, I cannot help but be proud of what the De La Salle Strings Ensemble has accomplished for their school and for our country. Again, I am extremely honored to sponsor our Senate resolution, which celebrates these young musicians who brought pride and honor to our beloved Philippines. They deserve to be recognized for their countless hours of training, talent, and amazing dedication to their craft. Mabuhay ang De La Salle Sobel Strings, Animo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Hontiveros. Mr. President, there being no other member who wishes to interpolate or propose any amendments to the measure, I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 758, subject to style. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, proposed Senate Resolution number 758 is hereby adopted by the Senate.
Mr. President, may I move that all members of the Senate present here today be made co-authors of this resolution. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Mr. President, may I ask for a minute suspension to allow
We
our...
have a member.
Before that, can
Mr. President, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, an alumni of LaSalle,
Yes.
would like to seek the floor, Mr. President. I move that he be recognized.
Sir
Our distinguished
President,
colleague from Taguig, Pateros.
I was
Who
just
will also
Senator
give
Cayetano.
extra bonus, Mr. President.
I just was going to say, Mr. President, of course they give us pride, but if you can also include as co-sponsor the alumni of LaSalle Sobel in the
Yes.
Senate.
How many are you? Just you in this chamber?
One who admits, I don't know the others.
No, you know, LaSalle Sobel is a very good school. I grew up in Alabang, and most of my barkada are from LaSalle Sobel, and they're good people, very good people.
I think your group taught a couple of LaSallites from Alabang lessons with your karate and your
Long time ago.
during those days.
During those days. It was quite boring during those days. Malayo tayo sa Manila. So, Majority Leader,
Yes,
since we
I
have
move
the...
for a previous question to
Since we
suspend the
already
session.
adopted the measure, we'd like to invite our colleagues to join us for a photo op and ask as well the ensemble to join us on the podium. Session
you, Mr.
suspended
President.
for 1 minute. Yes, my distinguished Majority Floor Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we resume consideration of the Senate Bill number 2233. This is the Bill on Public-Private Partnership Act. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we are now in the period of individual amendments. With the consent of the body, I move to resume the period of individual amendments using the amended copy of the bill as of September 13, 2023 as our working draft. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we recognize the distinguished sponsor of the measure, the gentleman from the great city of San Juan, Senator J.V. Ejercito, our Deputy Majority Leader.
Our Deputy Majority Floor Leader and sponsor of this measure, Senator J.V. Arcito, is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. To continue with the amendments on the PPP bill, on Section 3, to clarify, Mr. President, we have amended Section 3, definition of private partner on page 5, lines 29 to 30 of the substitute bill by deleting the phrase either by itself or through its contractors and or facility operators.
Is this the item number 1 on the proposed amendments, Your Honor?
Item number.
In
Yes,
my,
Your Honor.
matrix?
Yes, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion of the sponsor, amendments approved.
Yes, Mr. President, to continue on page 17A, line 25
So,
to page
we,
17.
just for the record, Your Honor, we are using already the clean copy of those proposed last week. Am I correct? So therefore, from page 1 to 16 has already been amended. That's correct? Your
Yes, Mr. President, that's correct.
Okay, therefore, let's start with page 17. No other ulterior amendments on this measure from page 1 to 16? There being none, let's proceed with page 17, Your Honors.
Yes, Your Honor, page 17A, Mr. President, line 25 to page 17C, line 2, delete the text of subsection A in its entirety and replace it with the following. Upon receipt of an unsolicited proposal, an implementing agency may either, number 1, decide to process such proposal in accordance with the provisions of this section, or number 2, reject the proposal if such proposal is deemed not aligned with the development plans of the implementing agency or if the implementing agency is already developing a project with a similar scope and or similar objective. An unsolicited proposal which an implementing agency decides to process pursuant to subsection A, 1 above, shall be evaluated for completeness, provided that unsolicited proposals requiring approval of the NEDA Board or the NEDA Board-ICC shall be submitted to the PPP Center for determination of completeness. In such cases, the PPP Center shall thereafter endorse the complete unsolicited proposals to the appropriate implementing agency. The determination of completeness shall be conducted within 10 calendar days upon receipt of the unsolicited proposal. All unsolicited proposals that are determined to be incomplete shall be returned to the private proponent by the implementing agency or by the PPP Center as the case may be. If the unsolicited proposal is determined to be complete, the implementing agency may, number 1, continue processing the unsolicited proposal in accordance with subsection D of this section, or number 2, decide to bid out the proposal as a solicited project pursuant to section 9 of this Act. In all the cases contemplated above, the implementing agency shall state in writing with corresponding justification the action it decides to take on the unsolicited proposal. If the implementing agency fails to act on an unsolicited proposal 3 calendar days after the end of the detailed evaluation period, the project proposal shall be deemed rejected without prejudice to any liability that the erring or negligent officials or employees may incur under this Act and or existing laws. The decision of the implementing agency on the unsolicited proposal shall be deemed final and non-appealable. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, the amendments of our distinguished sponsor is adopted. Is that all right, the minority leader?
Yes, the minority leader is just asking for a clean copy.
Okay. Shall we suspend? Session suspended or please proceed? Thank you, minority leader.
Yes, Mr. President, may I ask a minute suspension?
Yeah. Session suspended.
May I just be allowed to acknowledge a guest from the gallery, my good friend James Blanco is here, Mr. President.
Yes, a good friend of
Celebrity
mine
who's
as well.
also
Yeah,
here,
James.
Mr. President, just to acknowledge, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Move that we recognize the sponsor of the measure, Senator J.V.
Our
Harrison.
distinguished sponsors recognized.
Yes, Mr. President, to continue, Section 10, on page 17C, line 5, subsection B on limitations, delete from the word "the" until the word "PPP project" on line 6 and replace it with the phrase "projects subject of an unsolicited proposal." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 7, after the word "years," insert the phrase "from the submission of the unsolicited proposal." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 10, after the word "sources," insert a colon and the proviso, provided that such a reimbursement shall be in an amount not exceeding 6% of the project cost, excluding the cost of ROW acquisition. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on the same page and line, delete from the word "reimbursable" until the word "end" on line 11. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
No further amendments on page 17C.
Please proceed.
On page 18, delete from line 21 until page 21.
There's a portion here that says interchange section B, 10B, and
Yes.
section 10C.
Yes, Mr. President, interchange section 10B and section 10C. Thank you, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 18, delete from line 21 until page 21, line 19, and replace it with the following. Number 1, invitation to submit similar proposals. If the implementing agency decides to continue processing the unsolicited proposal, the implementing agency shall publish an invitation to submit similar proposals by posting information on its website within 3 calendar days from the issuance of its decision to process the unsolicited proposal. In case there are private proponents that intend to submit similar proposals, such proposals shall be submitted in accordance with subsection A of this section within 10 calendar days from publication of the invitation. Number 2, detailed evaluation of an unsolicited proposal and of the qualifications of the private proponent. Dash, if the implementing agency decides to continue processing an unsolicited proposal found to be complete, it shall conduct a detailed evaluation of the unsolicited proposal or similar proposals and of the qualification of the private proponents within 90 calendar days. After such detailed evaluation, the implementing agency may, number 1, accept the proposal and proceed to the negotiation pursuant to subsection D3 of this section, provided that in case there are more than one complete unsolicited proposal for the same or similar project, the implementing agency shall determine the most advantageous proposal for the government and the public among the submitted proposals. Considering, among others, economic and financial viability of the project, proposed project scope and terms, investment recovery scheme, risks proposed to be assumed by the government, and the qualifications of the private proponent. Number 2, reject the unsolicited proposal or all similar proposals in writing with the corresponding justification, semicolon. Or number 3, decide to bid out the unsolicited proposal as a solicited project pursuant to Section 9 of this Act. The decision of the implementing agency shall be communicated to the private proponent in writing no later than 3 calendar days from the end of the detailed evaluation period. Such decision by the implementing agency following the conclusion of the detailed evaluation shall be deemed final and non-appealable. I so move, Mr. President. No further amendments on page 18.
There be no objection to the motion, amendments approved.
On page 22, lines 5 to 14, delete the entire subsection and re-letter the succeeding subsections accordingly. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 23, delete from the word "that" until the word "further" on line 25. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 27, delete from the words "in evaluating" until the word "employed" on line 28. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection, amendments approved.
Still on the same page, line 29, delete from the word "whether" until the word "approved" on line 31 and replace it with the mechanism for evaluating comparative proposals which may be in any of the following. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendments on page 22. On page 23, line 1, delete the words "in a" and replace it with number 1, enclosed in parentheses, then capitalize letter R of the word "right to match." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion approved.
On the same page and line, delete the comma after the word "mechanism" and replace it with a hyphen. I so move, Mr.
There
President.
being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, between lines 4 and 5, insert a second paragraph on the right to match mechanism. If the original proponent is able to match the proposal of the challenger, the PPP project shall be awarded to the original proponent. Otherwise, the PPP project shall be awarded to the winning challenger. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on the same page, line 5, delete the words "in a" and replace it with number 2, enclosed in parentheses, then capitalize letter B of the word "bid." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page and line, delete the comma after the word "mechanism" and replace it with a hyphen. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on the same page and line, delete the phrase "the bonus shall be in the form of a percentage" and replace it with the words "a bonus." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on the same page, line 6, delete the word "financial." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 7 to 8, delete from the word "end" up to the acronym PTCs. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on the same page, line 8, after the word "bonus," insert the phrase "shall be in the form of a percentage to be determined by the appropriate approving body as part of the PTCs, provided further that such percentage." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 9, delete the word "financial" after the word "proponents." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 10, delete the word "comparative" until the word "proponent" before the comma on line 13 and replace it with "if the difference between the proposal of the top challenger and of the original proponent is less than the predetermined bonus." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 15, delete the word "financial" before the word "proposal." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 18, delete from the phrase "if the financial" until the word "proponent" on line 20 and replace it with "if the difference between the proposal of the top challenger and of the original proponent is beyond the determined bonus." On the same page, line 24, insert a letter F and close in parentheses before the phrase "all PPP contracts" to make the paragraph a new subsection. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendments on page 23. On page 25, lines 6 to 13, delete subsection G in its entirety. Reletter the succeeding sections accordingly. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendments on page 25. On page 26, line 3, between the word "the" and "rules," insert the word "implementing." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 4, delete the phrase "implementing this act" and replace it with "IRR of this act." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 8, between the words "create" and "guidelines," insert the words "and publish." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendments on page 26. On page 27, line 7, after the word "mechanisms," insert the phrase "pursuant to Republic Act number 9285, otherwise known as the Alternate Dispute Resolution Act of 2004. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 8, delete the phrase "and venue shall govern the dispute as well as the procedures." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 9, delete the phrase "involving the same." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 27, line 11, delete the word "fiscal" and replace it with the word "financial." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 16, insert the acronym PPP before the word "contract." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 22, insert the word "approved" before the word "project." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 27, lines 22 to 23. Delete the phrase "as approved by the appropriate approving body," as well as, and replace it with the word "and." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 27, line 30, delete the word "to" and replace it with the word "with." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On the same page and line, delete the word "report" and replace it with "for reporting of." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendments on page 27. On page 28, line 1, delete the word "determine" and replace it with "for." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page and line, delete the phrase "for the" and replace it with the phrase "due to." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 28, line 1, after the word "parties," delete the word "to" and replace it with the word "with." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 28, line 7, after the word "agency," insert the phrase "arbitral awards for settlement agreements." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 28, line 32, after the phrase "percentage of," delete the article "the" and replace it with the article "a." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 28. On page 29, line 2, after the word "recovery," add "s" to the word "scheme." Add the phrase "involving the grant of a portion or percentage of a reclaimed land." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 29, line 4, delete the word "upon" until the word "allowed" on line 6 and replace it with "a contract variation, expansion, or extension of an existing PPP project may be allowed, subject to due diligence and recommendation of the head of the implementing agency." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 19, between the words "the" and "project," insert the acronym PPP. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 29, line 28, after the word "variations," insert the phrase "not covered in items A to E above." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 29, line 30, delete the words "clearance or" and replace it with the article "the." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 31, insert the article "the" before the word "appropriate." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 29. On page 30, line 1, delete the word "deliberate." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 30, line 9, delete from the word "subject" until the word "project" on line 10 and replace it with the phrase "a private partner may divest its ownership, rights, or interest in a PPP project, subject to the approval of the head of the implementing agency." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 30, line 14, between the words "may" and "divest," insert the word "also." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 30, line 15, insert the acronym PPP before the word "project." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 30, line 23, insert the acronym PPP between the words "the" and "contract." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 26, insert the acronym PPP before the word "contract." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 27, insert the acronym PPP before the word "contract." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 30. On page 31, line 31, insert the word "and" after the second comma before the word "development." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 31. On page 32, line 5, delete the words "or contract." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
No more further amendment on page 31. 32. On page 33, line 19, between the second comma and the word "relevant," insert the word "and." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 33. On page 34, line 3, delete the word "by" and replace it with the word "of." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 12, delete the phrase "PPP project." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 34, line 25, insert the word "and" after the semicolon I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 34. On page 35, line 14, between the comma and the word infrastructure, insert the words, the technical boards of the, I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On page 35, line 15, delete the words technical board, including the hyphen preceding it. I so move, Mr.
There
President.
being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 16, delete the words technical board, including the hyphen preceding it. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 35, line 20, insert the words the board, enclosed in parentheses, after the word board, and before the comma. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 22, delete the phrase, and herein after referred to as the board, including the succeeding comma. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Still on page 35, line 27, delete the words NEDA Secretary and replace it with Secretary of the NEDA. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 35, line 28, insert the words as Vice Chairperson after the word DOF. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 35. On page 36, line 24, delete the words General Appropriations Act. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page and line, delete the open and close parentheses in the acronym GAA. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
No further amendment on page 36. On page 37, line 7 to 8, delete the sentence, the PPP Center shall continue to serve as the Secretariat for the PDMF Committee. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 35, line 28, insert the words as Vice Chairperson after the word DOF. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 35. On page 37, line 15, delete the phrase a portion of and capitalize letter T in the article the. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 16, delete from the word contributions until the word budgets on line 17 and replace it with the phrase a general appropriations. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 18, after the phrase determined by D, spell out DBCC as Development Budget Coordination Committee and add its acronym in enclosed parentheses, DBCC. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 18, delete from the word while until the word budget on line 19. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 20, delete the phrase and the use of such be approved by the DBCC. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, amendments approved.
On the same page, within lines 20 and 21, insert the following paragraphs. The Interagency Technical Working Group on Contingent Liabilities created under DBCC Resolution Number 2015-2 is hereby institutionalized. The PPP Center, in coordination with the aforementioned Interagency Technical Working Group, shall formulate the guidelines on the management of contingent liabilities arising from PPP projects and the use of the PPP Risk Management Fund or approval by the DBCC. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, delete lines 24 to 29. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 31, insert the phrase subject to the guidelines to be issued by the PPP Governing Board after the acronym LGU. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on the same page and line, after the period, delete from the article the until the word board on line 32, including the period thereafter. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
No further amendment on page 37. On page 38, line 3, delete the word and replace it with in accordance with. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 38, line 17, delete the and between the words considered and appropriately. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Also on page 38, lines 18 to 23, delete the entire sentence and replace it with the implementing agency and the PPP Center shall publish through their respective websites copies of all A, tender documents and B, PPP contracts executed under this Act In case of PPP contracts with provisions which are proprietary or may pose threats to national security or public safety, the procedures for the disclosure and publication of such contracts shall be consistent with existing and applicable laws, rules, and regulation. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 38. On page 39, line 7, delete the word which until the word mandate on line 9. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Also on page 39, line 26, delete from the words or the document until the word regulatory body on line 28 and replace them with the phrase, or if a law or a valid order of a court of competent jurisdiction or of a government or regulatory body, comma, mandates the disclosure of such document or information. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 39. On page 40, line 6, subsection E, delete from the word for until the word body on line 9 and replace them with all MOAs shall be submitted to the PPP Center and the NEDA Board-ICC in the case of national PPP projects, comma, or the appropriate approving body in the case of local PPP projects. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 40. On page 41, line 8, insert the acronym COA in enclosed parentheses after the word audit. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On page 41, line 16, delete the word "and" before the word "5" and replace it with the word "TO." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 41, line 20, delete the phrase "submission of a private proponent or a private partner" and replace it with the word "submitting." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 41, line 21, delete the phrase "concealment of" and replace it with the word "concealing." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on page 41, line 22, between the words "project" and "that," insert the phrase "by a private proponent or private partner." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 41, line 26, between the second comma and number 9, insert number 8 and a comma thereafter. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 28, delete the phrase "failing to ensure." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Still on the same page, line 29, before the word "compliance," insert the phrase "failing to exercise the required due diligence and /or to ensure." On the same page, line 31, delete from the phrase "failing to conduct diligence in." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 41. On page 42, lines 3 to 6, delete subsection F in its entirety and replace it with F, in case of public officer /S acting as the approving authority or member of the approving body, knowingly or with gross negligence approves any PPP contract that is contrary to law or manifestly and grossly disadvantageous to the government and the public, whether or not the public officer /S is /R signatory /IES to the PPP contract. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On page 42, lines 7 to 8, delete the phrase "as provided in sections 10D and E" and replace it with the phrase "insofar as determining completion and conducting detailed evaluation of the unsolicited proposal and the qualifications of the private proponent are concerned." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On page 42, line 16, delete from the word "performance" until the word "of" on line 17 and replace it with the word "performing." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
No further amendment on page 42. On page 43, line 12, delete the phrase "for any government project." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On page 43, lines 23 to 25, delete the entire sentence and replace it with the following sentence: "No administrative, criminal, or civil proceedings shall lie against any person for having committed acts under items A to O in the regular performance of his duties in good faith. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 43. On page 44, line 5, delete the word "its" before the word "chairperson" and replace it with the article "the." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page and line, delete the phrase "shall serve as its" and replace it with "as the." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 44, line 8, delete from the word "within" until the word "which" on line 12 and replace it with the following. The IRR Committee, in consultation with the Department of Public Works and Highways, Department of Transportation, other key implementing agencies, LGUs, relevant stakeholders, and the public shall formulate and prescribe the IRR within 90 calendar days from effectivity of this act. The IRR. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 44, line 19, delete the phrase "hearing and publication" and replace it with "consultation." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 44, line 24, delete the words "contract provisions" and replace them with the word "agreements." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 26, delete from the word "is" until the word "and" on line 27. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 31, delete the phrase "is consistent with the law" and I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 44. On page 45, line 3, delete the word "all" and replace it with the word "solicited." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page and line, delete the phrase "with ongoing procurement" and replace it with the phrase "which have commenced bidding" and unsolicited PPP projects which have commenced the comparative challenge process. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Still on the same page, line 5, delete the phrase "it's consistent with law" and I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Still on the same page, line 6, delete from the word "time" until the word "commenced" on line 7, replace it with the phrase "commencement of the bidding or the comparative challenge process." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 45, line 8, between the words "all" and the acronym PPP, insert the word "proposed." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 11, delete the words "procurement thereof" and replace it with the phrase "bidding or the comparative challenge process." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 45. On page 46, line 9, delete the phrase "and amending." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 46. On page 47, between lines 6 and 7, insert a new subsection 8 with the following text. Sections of Presidential Decree, or PD, number 1113, series of 1977, granting to the Construction and Development Corporation of the Philippines, or CDCP, the right to construct, operate, and maintain toll facilities in the North and South Luzon toll expressways, which are inconsistent with the provisions of this Act. Succeeding subsection shall be relettered accordingly. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 47. On page 48, lines 18 to 22, delete subsection 17 in its entirety. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 48, line 27, between the word "series" and the year 1977, insert the word "of." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 48. On page 49, line 1, between the word "series" and the year 1983, insert the word "of." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 49, line 5, between the word "series" and the year 2019, insert the word "of." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 49, line 6, insert the word "of" before the year 2009. I so move, Mr.
There
President.
being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 49, line 6, between the word "series" and the year 2013, insert the word "of." I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
No further amendment on page 49.
And that's it? I would like to.
Yes, Mr. President.
And over
That's
the
it.
permission of the body, this is all subject to style on the proper of course, corrections on the periods, commas, semicolons, etc., subject to staff. Session suspended for 1 minute. Aye. We'd like to instruct the secretary to produce a clean copy so that we may provide all our members with a clean copy and hopefully close this bill for second reading tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, with that, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2233. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, the consideration is suspended.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2001. This bill pertains to the new Philippine Passport Act. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we are now in the period of individual amendments. With that, I move to resume the period of individual amendments using the amended copy of the bill dated September 12, 2023 as our working draft. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved. And just for clarification, the draft that I have here, as it says as of September 12, is what was already amended last week.
Yes, Mr. President.
This is the clean
It's the
copy.
same version, Mr. President, that we all have, Mr. President. And with that, I move that we recognize the distinguished sponsor of the measure, no other than the distinguished lady from the great province of Ilocos Norte, Senator Amy Marcos, for her individual amendments. So move, Mr.
My
President.
distinguished colleague, Senator Amy Marcos, as sponsor of the measure, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Senate President. Thank you very much, Majority Leader. We continue with the individual amendments on Senate Bill 2001 per Committee Report 43. And those are as follows from Senators Legarda as well as Pimentel. Firstly, on page 2, line 21, in the word refers, delete the word S. I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Page 2, line 28, after the phrase entered into force in, to delete and replace the year 1968 with 1947. I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 3, line 8, after the phrase adoption procedures, add a comma and the phrase as provided in Republic Act number 11767 or the Foundling Recognition and Protection Act. I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 4, line 12, the word refers to delete the letter S. I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 6, line 18, after the word act, to add the comma and the phrase or competent proof. The comma after the word personnel. I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 29, after the phrase Court of Appeals, add a comma and the phrase Court of Tax Appeals. I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 9, line 9, delete the word including. I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the
Yes, we'd like to recognize our minority floor leader.
Just a clarificatory question.
yes,
The previous amendment mentioned, added the phrase Court of Tax Appeals. May we know the context of the amendment, the effect also, Mr. President?
That's on page 8, line 29.
I think we wanted to make explicit inclusion of the Court of Tax Appeals because they are the same rank as the CA.
What is the because I don't have the clean copy with me, Mr.
Sorry.
President. What is the context of this
The context
section?
is the right to a special passport.
It's for the right of diplomatic passport,
For the
Your Honor.
diplomatic passport. Na-exclude sila. They were not explicitly
So
mentioned.
number 4.
Yes, they
it has
deserve-
the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and the Justice of the Supreme Court, as well as the respective presiding justices of the Court of Appeals, and she added Court of Tax Appeals and Sandigan Bayan.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you
We-
very
we-
much.
We get the logic, Mr. President.
You agree on the amendment? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minority Leader. Yes, they're co-equal in rank po. On page 9, line 9, to delete the word including, I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 22, delete and replace the word in with on, I so move.
There being no objection,
On the same
approved.
page, line 30, after the word under secretaries, delete the comma and insert the word and, I so
there
move.
being no objection, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 31, after the phrase Court of Appeals, add comma and the phrase Court of Tax Appeals for the same reason.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page and line, before the phrase the Sandigan Bayan, delete the word and, I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 10, line 9, delete the phrase and household members, I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 30, delete the comma after the word booklet, I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 11, line 6, between the words to and return, insert the word there, I so move.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On the same line, line 19, on the same page, line 19, delete and replace the word for with the word to, I so
There
move.
being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page and line, between the words resident and or, insert the phrase of the Philippines.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Where are we now? On the same page, line 20, delete and replace the word Philippines with country. I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 13, line 6, insert a new subparagraph 1, which shall read as follows. When a departure order is issued by a competent court against a suspected person or a respondent to a criminal case, I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Renumber the succeeding subparagraphs accordingly. On the, I so move. Sorry.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
Where are we now? On the same page, line 13, delete the word of.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 21, change into lowercase the first letter of the word of.
There
I
being
so
no-
move.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On the same page and line, change into lowercase the first letter of the word and. I so move.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On page 14, line 7, delete and replace the word that with who. I so move.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 11, delete and replace 22E with 22A. I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On the same page, line 20, change into uppercase the respective first letters of the words Foreign Service Post. I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 15, lines 10 to 25, to delete and replace the entire section with the following. Passport Revolving Fund. The DFA may charge a service fee of not more than 30% of the regular passport fees for such service rendered to applicants relating to the processing and issuance of passports requiring special consideration, waiver, or issuance beyond regular office hours. The service fees received by the DFA under this section shall constitute a revolving fund to be called a passport revolving fund, which may be utilized by the DFA for the improvement of its passporting and consular services and other DFA services, except travel and transport allowances and expenses. The setting up, use, and disbursement of funds shall be subject to review, accounting, and auditing rules and regulations of the Commission on Audit and will be subject to annual review by Congress. The DFA Secretary shall submit a report on the disbursements of the fund every 6 months to both the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. I believe there's a typo, sir, on Senate. And the House of Representatives Committee on Foreign Affairs. I so move.
There being no objection, motion is approved, subject to style.
On same page to transpose sections 17 and 18. I so move.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On page 16, line 2, before the word senior, to delete and replace the word for with by. I
There being no
so move.
objection, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 28, delete and replace the word to with upon. I so move.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On page 18, line 7, delete and replace the word to with upon. I so move.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
On page 19, line 11, delete and replace the word to with upon. I so move.
There being no objection, amendments approved.
On page 20, line 6, between the words or and large, to insert the phrase on a. I so
There
move.
being no objection, motion is approved.
On the same page, line 12, delete and replace the word in with the phrase on a. I so move.
There being no objection, motion is approved. On amendment, subject to style with the permission of the body.
Thank you very much, Senate President. Thank you very much, Minority Leader.
Our distinguished colleague. May suspend session for 1 minute.
During the break, the distinguished lady, our Senate President Pro Tempore, together with the members of the minority and the author of the measure, came up with a more acceptable specific words.
Actually, Majority Leader, that is because of the eagle eyes of our minority floor leader. With
Yes.
one particular section where he noticed that it should be a whole departure rather than departure order. Has there been a consensus between the
Yes.
sponsors?
Yes, Mr. President, and may we recognize the distinguished sponsor of the measure, Senator Amy Marcos.
Our
Yes.
distinguished colleague, Senator Amy Marcos, is recognized.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President and Majority Leader. And as agreed, the Legarda amendment is further amendment to be highly specific, and that is on page 3 of the copy sent to you. We are amending on page 13 of the law, of the bill. Line 6, insert a new subparagraph 1, which shall read as follows. When a whole departure order or a precautionary whole departure order is issued by a competent court against a suspected person or a respondent to a criminal case, I so move. Mr.
There-
President.
There being no objection from all our members, amendment is approved.
That will be all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
very
Thank you,
much.
Senator Marcos. Mr. President, with no other individual amendments, I move to close the period of individual amendments. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the consent of the body, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill number 2001. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. We congratulate our...
Is this a priority measure? Do we have a? Oh, we have none. We're waiting. Okay. We'd like to congratulate the sponsor for the meantime while we're waiting for the certification. But yes.
Yes,
we can
Mr.
suspend
President. With that, I
consideration.
move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2001. So move,
There
Mr.
being no
President.
objection, consideration suspended. Thank you.
Mr. President, at this juncture and with the permission of the body, I move that we proceed with the privileged speech and recognize our distinguished colleague, our Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros, to deliver her privileged speech. So move, Mr. President.
Our distinguished Deputy Minority Floor Leader, Senator Risa Ontiveros, is recognized.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President, at salamat po sa Majority Leader. Mr. President, I rise on a point of personal and collective privilege. Mr. President, I rise not just as the chairperson of the Senate Committee on Women, not just as a long-standing advocate for children, but also as a mother. I'm of the belief that all children are our children. Mayroon tayong responsibilidad na protektahan ang lahat ng bata. At kung may kahit isang bata na nasa panganib o inaabuso, tungkulin natin na sila ay saklolohan. Dear colleagues, a community of children in Socorro, Surigao del Norte is crying for help. These children are our children. Ang pinag-uusapan nating mga bata ay higit sa 1,000 kabataan na nasa kamay ng isang mapanlinlang, malupit at mapang-abusong kulto. Mr. President, nakakahindik po ang ibabahagi ko sa inyo ngayong araw. And it is a matter of grave urgency that I'm afraid could not be postponed. This is a harrowing story of rape, sexual violence, child abuse, forced marriage, perpetrated on minors by a cult in the municipality of Socorro, Surigao del Norte. Napakaganda po ng munisipyo ng Socorro. Kilala para sa Sohoton Cave at lagoons. At katabi lang din ng sikat na isla ng Siargao. Pero sa likod ng likas na ganda ng munisipyong ito ay may kakilakilabot na sekreto. Matagal na ang People's Organization na ang pangalan ay Socorro Bayanihan Services. Kilala ito dati sa pagiging civic organization na nagsusulong ng bayanihan sa munisipyo ng Socorro. Ngunit, noong 2017, nag-iba ang hugis at anyo ng organisasyong ito. Ayon sa mga taga Socorro, kasama ang mismong mayor ng munisipalidad, nagsimula ang kulto noong may isang 17 na taong gulang na bata na ginroom para maging susunod na di umanong tagapagligtas. Kinumbinse ng leader ng organisasyon na itong si J. Renz Kilario na ang gawing leader ng Socorro Bayanihan Services dahil nga siya ang susunod na Mesiyas. Siya daw ang bagong Jesus. Siya daw ang magliligtas sa kanila. Siya ay binigyan ng script, tinuruan paano tumindig at magsalita na may tikas ng isang Mamerto Galanida na 3-term mayor ng Socorro at 3-term na bokal. Pagkatapos ay idineklara ni J. Renz sa komunidad na siya daw ang reincarnation ni Senyor Santo Niño. Ito ang kabanganakan ni Senyor Aguila. Noong Pebrero 2019, niyanig ang Surigao del Norte ng isang lindol. Nakakita ng oportunidad si Senyor at ang kanyang mga handlers. Sinabihan niya ang mga tao na sumama sa kanya sa bundok na ang tawag ay Kapihan dahil iyon daw ang langit. At ang hindi sumama sa kanya ay masusunog sa impyerno. As a result of these statements, there was a mass exodus to the mountain by the thousands of members of the organization, now having all the indicators of a religious cult. At hindi lang po ito mga ordinaryong tao na di nakapag-aral. The LGU recorded mass resignations of DepEd teachers and government employees. More than 100 elementary and secondary teachers from Socorro East and West districts who were SBI members went on AWOL. 13 regular employees and 41 job order workers from the municipal local government unit of Socorro have resigned. Enrollments at the Socorro East and West districts had an alarming decrease of 847 learners who are members of the Socorro Bayanihan Services, Inc., both in the elementary and secondary levels. Ayon sa isang nakapanayam ng aking staff na dating elementary school teacher, sabi daw ni Senyor Aguila, wala daw government employee ang pupunta sa langit. Kung may mga utang daw kami, huwag daw kami mag-alala dahil buburahin daw ni Senyor Aguila ang aming mga utang. Hawak ko po, Mr. President, ang salaysay nitong dating DepEd teacher na ito. The mountain allowed the cult to continue its activities without scrutiny. And this is where the harrowing tales of child abuse come in. I would like you to listen to this video of one alias Jane.
Ako tuod si tawganakan ko sa ngalan na si Jane, 15 years old, sa ka-minor. Ang ahong ambisyon nga unta na may mahitabo sa ahong kaugmaon nga mahuman ko sa akong pag-eskwela, makatabang ko sa kapobrehon sa akong mga ginikanan, ug unta na mahimo kong army sa uguya paming sa kaskapihan nga didto ko giminjo sa akong kabatanon, giminjo ko ni Jeren Skelario nga among gituohan na siya among Ginoo. Ug amo pong ug ako pud usa ka minor nga gihanjo ni Jeren Skelario nga makig 6 nga murag feel na ako nga murag girip ko kay sa ijang illegal age na unja ako minor pa na ija kong gihanjo sa akong kabata na unta na ag akong huna-huna pa na pas pag-eskwela nga dili pa ko maminjo nga makahuman pa ko sa eskwela naho nga dili unta na ko maingon ani og guya paming sa kaskapihan nga agaho usap ko dahong ginikanan giminjog lain bisag na arag akong tatay ang kasakit para naho nga giminjo si jaglain ang nanay sa usapod ka pamilyado nga unta na sawa paming sa kaskapihan bisag pobre rami malipay ko nga buo mi ang panawagan na unta injuming tabangan nga dili na ko mahibalik sa akong ginikanan kay gusto ko sa akong tatay kay aron na ako'y kaugmaon ug akong panawagan pod nga ag mga minor nga parinaho na tuas kapihan unta injung tabangan kay aron makahuman sa ilang pag-eskwela ug para na nga na-scam, para na nga minor, para na unta na dili sila mahibalik sa ilang ginikanan kay lagi lisod didto ug minjoon ra permi.
Ito naman po si Elias Chloe. Pilit pinakasal at kinulong pa sa kwarto para pilitin makipagtalik.
Si tawgan na kan ko sa ngalan. Ako tuod si Chloe, 15 years old. O usa ko ka-member sa Bayanihan Services Incorporated. Karon gitawag ng Omega de Salonera. Ninawag ko atong June 2022 tungod kay usa ko sa minor nga gipugos og minjo ni Senior Aguila nga among gituohan og Ginoo. Sa akong pagkabata, 13 years old, giparisan kog 21 years old nga wala sa akong kabubuton. Pagka minjo na ako, ning handyo ko sa akong ginikanan nga ipabuwag ko kay dili ko ganahan pa maminjo kay gusto kog maeskwela. Pero iingog akong nanay nga kani ang kinahanglan gadjud ta mo sunod kay mamay sugo sa atong Ginoo. Uwi naliko nila ay makapabuwag kung maura ag kamatajon. Mo tong nagpahila ko kasubot sa akong gibati nga ingon ana di gadjud dapat ag ilang pagtuo sa Ginoo nga bisag ako nga giingon ani dapat gadjud sila nga motuo kay Ginoo lagi kuno. Mo tong panahon nga gibutang ko sa bahay nilang Jerens o namutana si Just Lucky nga nakuha na ba kuno ko or nakig-6 na ba kuno og Lucky. Unja ni nga maglaki nga waya pa kuno. Otong giingnan si Diya nga naman waya pa man ninyo kuha nga mga gagmay raman ng inyong asawa. Usa pa authorized na ninyo na rapon kay inyo na mga asawa. Dahil panahon nga gilakan mis kwarto ay gusto gadyo nila nga kuhaon na makasix na naglaki. Unja dito nga time hila ko unja kaingan kog ma-rape ko adto pero madjugani kay aglaki. Aning kuan nga inhila pod si Diya nang utana si Diya unsa ko ni Diya sa nganong way dili ko na kumusugot kung giingnan nga dili pa ko gusto maminjo ug ikaw may gusto nang mawa kay gaw gad yung gusto makahuman kog eskwela sa akong mga ginikanan nga naa dinha unta mo lugsong na mo kay di ko gusto nga magihan sang manghod ag nagihan ako gusto ko nga makahuman sila og eskwela gusto ko nga na sila grado gusto ko nga mag-uban ta pero dili diha gusto ko nga, muari na mo na ako. Dili kaya na tadiya mag-uban. Muwi ka ugmaon gina.
This cult is armed and dangerous. Ayon sa isa pang menor de edad na itatago natin sa pangalang Renz, nakita niya mismo ang mga armas ng kultong ito. At nakita din niya ang sinasakong armas noong eleksyon.
Ako tuod si Chloe.
Ako si Renz Abando, 12 anyos ang pangidaron. Ang takas ko sa kapihan sa nakos tungas paksol ingagi niya. Nangakita ko nito sundang mga armas dito ko bahay na nakakita ko dito ito pag eleksyon, pagsorang masako ang armas. Sunod, naminjog ang tatay. Dito may sa kapihan. Adto kay, di mas ganas na na og minjog ang tatay kay mabungkag mga pamilya. Hindi, manadong ipatulog ko to. Di man siya masugot og minjos na, minjos tatay. Na, yung kuan man sila, si Jared man kuan, minjos ka daw. Mga amiga na kaya nila makalayas dito sa among giagihan sa una na alisod dito.
Paano po sila nagkakapera? Kinokolekta ng organisasyon ang halos o mahigit na 50% ng mga natatanggap na 4Ps at senior citizen pension ng mga miyembro. Nung panahon ng pandemya at noong hinampas ang Surigao ng Bagyong Odette, naglabas ang gobyerno ng social assistance para sa mga residente. Kinolekta ng organisasyon ang 40% to 60% ng natanggap ng bawat isa ng kanilang kasapi. Ang mga natatanggap na tupad o AIX, ang pera ng taong bayan, napupunta sa isang kulto. Pero mayroon din po kaming nakalap na impormasyon na ang totoo at mas malaking source of funding ng kulto na ito ay droga. In fact po, kung tama ang sources, ang motibasyon kung bakit tinayo ang kulto na ito ay para maging human shield dahil nailagay sa narco list ang pasimuno ng organisasyon na ito na si Karen Sanico at ang kanyang dating business partner na yumaong Municipal Circuit Court Judge na pinaslang di umano dahil sa kanyang pagkasangkot sa droga noong 2019. Si Mamerto Galanida ay naihamig di umano nila Sanico at naging bahagi din ng masterminds ng grupo. In July of this year, Mr. President, may 8 bata po na nakatakas na sa kulto at nasa kanlungan ng LGU at DSWD. Nagbuo ang Municipal Mayor ng Socorro na si Mayor Riza Timkang ng task force para gumawa ng aksyon laban sa kultong ito. Ngunit makapangyarihan po ang kulto. And this, Mr. President, is the urgency of the issue I am talking about. Gamit ang kanilang pera at impluensya, kinakasangkapan po nila ang mga magulang ng mga batang tumakas na miyembro pa nila at nagsasampa po sila ng habeas corpus ng mga kaso para maibalik ang mga bata sa kulto. Nagtagumpay na sila sa isang bata at itutuloy po nila isa-isa hanggang makuha po nila lahat. Ang mga bata na po mismo ang nagmamakaawa na huwag na silang ibalik sa kulto. Bakit nga naman nilang gugustuhing bumalik sa isang komunidad, sa isang leader na nanloloko, nanggagahasa at nananakit? Mr. President, this cult is not a cult in the shadows of Surigao. Sila po ay nagtatanim ng impluensya nila sa Manila at sa iba pang bahagi ng bansa. Ang kanilang binuong performing group, ang Omega de Salonera, ay nanalo pa sa isang international festival sa Korea. Dahilan kung bakit pinarangalan sila dito sa Pilipinas. Si Senyor Aguila mismo, ang rapist ng mga bata, ang facilitator ng child marriage, ay nakatapak pa sa ating Senado at nagpa-picture pa sa atin na mga senador. Alam ko hindi natin ito alam, mga colleagues, dahil lagi naman may nagpapa-picture sa atin. Mr. President, this situation is so urgent na agad pong lumipad ang aming team sa Socorro to understand and vet the issue. And what we have learned is dire and despicable. We need to save those children. It is our duty not just as senators, but also as parents, as human beings, to save children in most need of our help. We managed to raise the age of sexual consent. We passed the law penalizing child marriage. We strengthened protections against child trafficking. Now, real children are in danger, and time is of the essence. We must not look away. Dagang salamat kaayo, Mr. President.
Thank you very much to our distinguished colleague. That is against the law. If you remember, if you can recall, in the last Congress, we passed the statutory rape. We have brought up the age of consent. And therefore, that example of a 21-year-old marrying a 13-year-old is clearly a case of statutory rape. So the law should be implemented. And I've noticed that in these areas, fortunately, kung saan kami galing ni Senator Pimentel, which is Mindanao, there's still a proliferation of these types of communities that are in violation of law. And kawawang-kawawa yung mga kabataan dun. Talagang kawawang-kawawa. So, Majority Leader, I know for a fact that there is already one resolution
Yes.
being, that was already...
Handled in the public order, Mr.
Yes,
President.
it was already referred to the public services, of public order rather, public order committee. So maybe I ask for a minute suspension to confer with the,
Yes, okay, Mr.
Or is it
President.
all right?
We already conferred, Mr. President.
maybe you can
with
make it joint with Senator
A
Risa's.
secondary committee, Mr. President, the Committee
Yes,
on Women.
Committee on Women.
May I move,
Yes.
Mr. President, at this juncture to refer the privileged speech of our distinguished colleague to the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader.
Thank
There
you,
being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Mr. President, may I ask for a minute suspension?
Session suspended.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders. Committee Report Number 106 on Senate Bill Number 2415. This bill pertains to the VAT refund mechanism for non-resident tourists. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, motion is approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill Number 2415 under Committee Report Number 106 and ask the Secretary General to read the title of the measure.
Yes, please proceed, Secretary.
An act creating a VAT refund mechanism for non-resident tourists, adding a new section 112-8 to the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended for the purpose.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize Senator Win Gatchalian, the chairperson of the Committee on Ways and Means, to deliver the sponsorship speech.
Yes, before I recognize the sponsor, I'd just like to say the time has come for this measure. Particularly, all our other Asian neighbors are doing this. Thailand, the favorite vacation spot of the sponsor, together with other areas where they give VAT discounts. And I think that will increase the number of tourists to our country. Therefore, I'm very happy to hear that the gentleman from Valenzuela is sponsoring the measure. We'd like to recognize the distinguished sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just like you, Bangkok is our favorite R&R destination, Mr. President.
Yes, very good food.
Very good. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, a pleasant afternoon to you all. I rise today to advocate a bill that carries a spirit of positivity, for it entails not the imposition of taxes, but rather the prospect of tax refunds, one that will significantly impact our tourism sector and benefit non-resident tourists visiting the Philippines. As we reflect upon our collective journeys to foreign lands and the diverse jurisdictions we encompass, a universally recognized concept comes to light: the VAT refund system. As Filipinos, this concept resonates deeply within our cultural identity. Tayong mga Pinoy, mahilig mag-shopping kapag tayo ay nasa ibang bansa. Buying pasalubong for our families back home is indeed one of our cultural hallmarks. Hindi natin maitatanggi na halos lahat tayo ay naglilista ng itinerary natin sa tuwing tayo ay pumupunta sa ibang bansa. At isa rito ang pagbili ng mga produkto mula sa VAT refund accredited stores at pagtiyak na makukuha ang VAT refund bago makalipad balik ng Pilipinas. Ako mismo ang isa sa mga gumagawa nito. In fact, my own experience in Singapore stands out, where their landscape has fully embraced digitalization. Astonishingly, in just a few minutes, the refund was effortlessly and digitally channeled into my credit card. Currently, the scope of VAT refund extends beyond Singapore's borders. Our neighboring countries such as Indonesia, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, and Vietnam have already embraced VAT refund initiatives for tourists, strategically fostering tourism. By looking at the countries that I mentioned, it becomes evident that we share common premier offerings for non-resident tourists. Walang duda na sa bawat sulok ng ating kapuluan, tayo ay pinagpala ng likas na yaman na puno ng kagandahan at kahangahangang tanawin. Sino ba naman ang hindi gugustuhin makita ang puting buhangin at malinaw na tubig, dagat ng Boracay na kilala sa buong mundo? Nandyan ang Banawe Rice Terraces sa Ifugao, kung saan makikita ang gilas at talento ng mga ninuno sa pagtatanim ng mga palayan. Hindi rin mawawala sa listahan ang ating mga kolonyal na mga destinasyon na nagsisilbing bintana sa ating kasaysayan tulad ng Intramuros sa Maynila na nagpapaalaala sa atin ng yaman ng ating kultura. Yet there is one aspect that distinctly differentiates our neighboring countries from us, a more robust shopping portfolio. This contrast is founded upon the existence of a VAT refund scheme in their countries, an advantage that, regrettably, we have yet to adopt. As this realization dawns, I cannot help but envision the potential economic advantages this could yield for our nation once we pursue it. Allow me to present an overview of the political economic gains that we are poised to achieve as outlined in the assessments by the National Economic and Development Authority. In terms of net benefit, this fiscal reform is projected to generate an amount ranging from 3.3 billion pesos to 5.7 billion pesos per annum from 2024 to 2028. The proposed scheme is also expected to create additional employment opportunities of 4,400 to 7,100 per annum from 2024 to 2028. Moreover, the grant of a VAT refund can encourage purchases from tourists, especially since shopping has emerged as a motivating factor for travel in recent years. In the Philippines, shopping constitutes an average of 12% of the total expenditures by inbound tourists before the pandemic. While this figure is notably lower compared to the expenditure items such as accommodation, food and beverage, and transportation services, it is worth noting that in 2022, the share of shopping increased substantially to 21.9%, indicating its potential to drive our economy moving forward. Mr. President, as our economic activities resume, it is important that we seize this opportune moment to attract more non-resident tourists to our shores. As we look back to the initial impact of the pandemic in 2020, a stark decline was observed in gross value added or GVA of the tourism sector, plummeting to 917 billion pesos, equivalent to 5.1% of our gross domestic product. Fast forward 2 years, and we witness a resurgence in tourism GVA reaching 1.38 trillion pesos, now constituting 6.2% of our GDP. However, it is crucial to note that we are still below the pre-pandemic benchmarks. As we now strive to steer ourselves towards recovery, it is crucial that we take proactive measures to entice non-resident tourists to once again grace our shores and witness the wonders we have to offer. This is why I stand today to sponsor Senate Bill number 2415, which aims to establish a VAT refund mechanism for non-resident tourists. Under this proposed measure, non-resident tourists will be eligible for a VAT refund for goods purchased under specific conditions. First, the goods must be locally purchased by the tourists themselves from duly accredited stores. This ensures that the VAT refund is granted for legitimate purchases made personally by the tourists from the physical stores within our borders. Second, the goods must be taken out of the Philippines by the tourists within 60 days from the date of purchase. This ensures that VAT refund is granted to non-resident tourists who are merely visiting the Philippines and not intending to remain in the country for an extended period. Lastly, the value of the locally purchased goods must amount to at least 3,000 pesos per transaction. This aims to encourage substantial spending, which will have a meaningful impact on our economy. Once passed into law, the Department of Finance shall engage the services of one or more reputable and globally recognized VAT refund operators. These operators will offer comprehensive end-to-end solutions to the government, facilitating the establishment and smooth operation of a VAT refund system specially designed for non-resident tourists. Mr. President, the Philippines is graced with unparalleled beauty that stands out as our national treasure. In this context, VAT refund scheme assumes a role beyond mere financial reimbursement. It emerges as a potential marketing tool, a means to unveil the beauty of our nation to the global stage. Kung pagandahan ng bansa ang pag-uusapan, marami tayong maipagmamalaki sa buong mundo. In fact, as reported by the Department of Tourism, we welcome over 2.47 million foreign tourists for the first half of 2023. The objective of this proposed measure extends beyond the mere visitation of our picturesque tourist destination or immersion in our rich culture. We aspire to offer our tourists the added dimension of gratifying shopping experience facilitated by the VAT refund mechanism. Mr. President, through this proposed measure, our local communities, particularly those in popular tourist destinations, will experience a resurgence in business activities, ultimately leading to an improved quality of life for the residents. Dahil sa pagtaguyod ng turismo sa bawat sulok ng ating bansa, mapapaangat ang lokal na ekonomiya at higit pang mapapalago ang mga maliliit na negosyo sa ating mga komunidad. Additionally, this scheme will offer a stellar opportunity to promote and highlight our one town, one product, showcasing the uniqueness and craftsmanship of each community. Sa pagtangkilik ng OTOP, binibigyan natin ng pagkakataon paunlarin at paangatin ang pagkakakilanlan ng bawat komunidad. Sa likod ng bawat produkto ay isang kwento ng pagtsatsaga at pagmamahal sa ating kultura at tradisyon na nagmula pa sa ating mga ninuno. At this juncture, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the co-authors of this measure, Senate Majority Leader Joel Villanueva and Senator Jinggoy Estrada, for his contribution in drafting this significant piece of legislation. Further, let me also acknowledge the active participation of numerous public and private stakeholders following a public hearing and a technical working group meeting of the Committee on Ways and Means. As the chairman of the committee, I would like to take this opportunity to thank them for their invaluable contributions. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, I urge every one of you to join me in supporting this bill, a measure that embodies hope, resilience, and prosperity for our beloved Philippines. By incentivizing tourists to spend more within our borders, we will undoubtedly drive economic growth, create employment opportunities, and enhance the overall well-being of our people. It is a momentous juncture for our tourism industry to not just shine, but to thrive. The VAT refund mechanism emerges as our gateway to achieving a competitive edge, harmonizing us with our neighboring nations in pursuit of excellence. Sa paglisan ng mga turista sa ating bansa, hayaan nating maging susi ang batas na ito upang maipabaon sa kanila hindi lamang ang mga pasalubong at magagandang alaala, kundi pati na rin ang ating malasakit at pagmamahal. Indeed, let's love the Philippines. Thank you very much, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues.
Thank you, Senator Gatchalian. Session is suspended.
Mr. President, Senator Jinggoy Estrada would also like to insert his sponsorship speech into the records. Let me just put it into the record, Mr. President.
Yes, we take note.
Thank you, Mr. President. This juncture, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2415 under Committee Report number 106. I so move, Mr.
There
President.
be no objection, motion approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this juncture, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2028 under Committee Report number 61. This is the bill on expanding the coverage of the Centenarians Act. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we have sponsored the measure, and with that, I move to open the period of interpellations and debate and recognize the distinguished sponsor, Senator Amy Marcos, and to interpellate our minority leader, Senator Coco Pimentel. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the motion, motion is approved. We'd like to recognize our distinguished sponsor, once again, Senator Amy Marcos, very hardworking sponsor, and our minority floor leader, distinguished gentleman from Cagayan de Oro, Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. President, and Majority Leader and Minority Leader. We'll be honored to receive your questions.
Thank you, ma'am. So let me commence with my interpellation with that permission from our sponsor. I am also a co-author here
That's
of
correct.
this bill, Mr. President. So actually,
Actually, it's a unanimous bill on both sides.
to use the terminology of our Senate President, this is a
Happy bill.
happy bill.
There we go.
Happy
Yes,
bill, Mr.
more
President.
precisely, yes.
So yes, we know what this bill is all about, what is the purpose, but I think, Mr. President, we have subjected this to a lot of discussion informally. So if we know from the sponsor what direction or what final form we plan our bill to take, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, Minority Leader, we are taking into consideration the exigencies of the national budget and the many requirements on our financing capacity. And as a result, we've come to an agreement that what we should put forth is a revision of the three bills presented. Those of Senator Pimentel, our minority leader, Senator Revilla, and Senator Gatchalian. And that is to give recognition to our 80-year-olds, providing them with 10,000 each, our 90-year-olds, providing them with a longevity award of 20,000 each, and finally, maintaining the Centenarians award of 100,000 each, even as it is in the present law, which, according to the estimates provided by our DSWD and the Listahanan 3, should total roughly 2.1 billion plus or minus, an amount that, given the honorable purpose of the bill, is not extremely large.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. This bill actually is meant to honor what we call longevity, di ba? So, to recognize or to honor, and then we are actually not making any economic classification here. Basta umabot ka sa edad na mga sinabi natin are milestone ages, you will receive the parang cash gift from the government.
That is correct, Minority Leader. It's really a recognition of longevity and an award. Even like the loyalty awards provided by private corporations and the government from time to time for loyal employees in service for over 10 years. What is provided as a stipend for medical and other urgent expenses of our senior citizens, particularly indigent senior citizens, is the social pension, which is now raised to 1,000 pesos a month and is actually for the first time included in the NEP and not merely in the unprogrammed of GAA 2024.
So at least klaro po yan na ito po ay recognition cash gifts at iba pa yung senior citizens allowances
Yes,
for the indigent senior citizens. Ano na po ba ang, just ito for the record lang po to, and out of curiosity, and siguro yung mga nakikinig at nanonood sa atin gusto rin malaman, ano po ba ang life expectancy ng Pilipino ngayon?
Ang life expectancy ng Pilipino ngayon is 71 for men and roughly 76 for women. Women, obviously, even 78 for females. I'm sorry.
78.
So 71 for males, 78 for females. Clear 7-year advantage for females.
That's a big advantage, Mr. President. 7 years. And then, since ang atin pong beneficiaries ay yung mga mag-80 years old, magse-celebrate ng 80th birthday, 90th and 100th, may we know our estimates on the number of our beneficiaries for this recognition cash gifts, Mr. President?
Yes, I believe that the numbers that are anticipated based on our PSA numbers would be about 131,000 for 80-year-olds, 26,700 plus for 90-year-olds, and 2,623 for 100-year-olds. Right now, for the centenarians, we are giving less than 1,700 because of the difficulty in disbursing and identifying them.
Apo, basta importante, basta alam nila na meron po silang cash gift.
That's correct.
So anyway, if it's a gift. Yung iba, it's waivable because it's a gift, Mr. President. So.
Yes, we of course have some concerns, and I believe the version in Congress is that every 5 years a gift should be given. But I believe that might be very difficult to disburse as well as be possibly confusing. 10 years seems to be the traditional recognition.
Opo, doon sa ating committee report, there's an inflation peg, di ba? So
Yes.
are we going to pursue that? Ako kasi, my position is this will complicate matters, Mr. President.
Yes, we're happy to let go of that, given the wild inflationary
Right. Okay, thank you.
numbers we have today.
Siguro po, Mr. President, we just anticipate since sa 100 years old, we are maintaining the existing law or program.
Yes,
So-
that is the bill proposed by both Senators Revilla and Gatchalian.
Apa. And then, so, ang bagong feature ng ating panukala, pag mag-80 ka at mag-90th birthday ka, doon ka may bago kang cash gift.
Yes,
So,
that's right.
kung pwede po, Mr. President, we anticipate the transition since new program ito, and we could govern already the scenario where for those who are those who are already 80 at
Yes.
the time the law becomes effective, and those who are already 90. Hindi, yung already 80 is nag-birthday na,
Yes.
not yet celebrating the 81st birthday.
That's correct.
Nag-90th birthday na, not yet celebrated the 91st birthday, entitled po sila.
Yes, that's
Sa cash
correct.
gift,
They should be qualified. Thank you very much for clarifying,
So,
Minority Leader.
If we make sure that there is a section governing that situation and
Yes.
making it very clear that they are entitled. So,
Yes, thank you for the clarification. We will add that.
so with that, Mr. President, I think the version of the bill in the mind of our sponsor already captures the consensus of this chamber, and it does not really change the existing program. It introduces new benefits to younger, quotation marks ko na younger
Younger
celebrants.
seniors.
Oh, younger celebrants or younger seniors, Mr. President. So let me congratulate our sponsor for also having been very patient with us and being very meticulous with her computations, and hindi lang sa meticulous, and accurate. Yan ang importante na nakita natin yung...
Thank you very
So the total
much.
program, ma'am, will cost how much? The total program?
I believe it will be 2.107, and this incorporates billion, already incorporating the existing Centenarian program.
Yes, oo. Ito, because of our new programs, ito lang po yung, this will now be the budget implication.
That's correct.
That 2.1 billion. So, I think we can afford this, and I think we should give this. Kaya, di ba?
Yes, we're all in full agreement.
Yes.
Congratulations po to all of us. Thank you very much, Minority Leader, and we will give everyone a clean copy of the bill as soon as possible.
Thank you for the time. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Thank you very
if I
much.
may.
Yes, Majority Leader.
First of all, Mr. President, let me congratulate our distinguished colleague from the great province of Ilocos Norte for passionately pushing this very important landmark legislation. I just have one question, Mr. President, because as everyone know very well, this representation sponsored and principally authored the doubling of our social pension for our senior citizens. But unfortunately, Mr. President, we have been receiving reports since the passage of the law, still half of the pension fund, which is only 500 pesos, ang nare-receive pa rin ng ating mga senior citizens. And we have been fighting for this measure not only to be passed, Mr. President, but also to be implemented properly. But unfortunately, it was not implemented this year, and our senior citizens are hoping and praying. They are already fasting, Mr. President, so that the full implementation of the law will be realized come 2024. So my only question, Mr. President, and my only reservation, Mr. President, even during the time when we were discussing this particular measure inside the Senate lounge, is that will we have a budget finally to implement the doubling from 500 pesos to 1,000 pesos social pension for our senior citizens? Because if I look at the figures right now being shown here inside this plenary, it's only 2.1 billion, which I think is manageable, Mr. President. But if you look at the budget for the social pension, I know it's way higher. So I just wanted to put on record, Mr. President, that even before we act on this particular measure, we are already assured that our senior citizens will get what is due them with regard to the law that we passed last Congress. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, distinguished colleague.
Yes, thank you very much, and I hope it's of help if you could look at the slide that we've put up regarding the social pension. It's been a matter of grave concern that we have not been able to deliver the 500 additional amount that was promised originally in the bill of Majority Leader Villanueva. So, ang nangyari, naglagay po tayo ng unprogrammed appropriation dahil ayaw pumayag noong 2023 at mukha naman paunti-unti may lumalabas. Kung sakasakali, ma-release yung 25 billion na yan, mawawala na yung utang natin, may konting excess pa ng 489 million. But for 2024, nakaprogram na siya na kompleto. Kulang na lang nung 3 billion na sigurado naman ako, tutulungan ninyo akong maghanap niyan para wala na tayong utang sa mga lolo't lola.
So we mean to say, Mr. President, there's still 3 billion lacking plus the
Plus the 2.1.
2.1. So that's about 5 billion, Your Honor, Mr. President.
Siguro nun,
The help of and our desire to honor our senior citizens. So with that, Mr. President, let me put into the records my full support to this very important piece of legislation. At this juncture, Mr. President, may I move that we recognize also Senator Bong Revilla for his manifestation/interpellation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, I
Thank you,
distinguished
Mr.
colleague,
President.
Senator Bong Revilla is recognized.
We thank the very able and hardworking Chairperson of the Committee on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development, Senator Amy Marcos, for shepherding this measure, which has been our commitment to our beloved senior citizens, Mr. President. This is not a question, but a mere reiteration. No less than the United Nations Principles for Older Persons mandate that senior citizens should have access to social and legal services to enhance their autonomy, protection, and care. Hindi naman po lingid sa kaalaman ng lahat na sa dapit hapon ng kanilang buhay, dumarami ang pangangailangan ng ating mga senior citizens na kadalasan ay hindi na nila kayang matustusan sa kadahilan ng retirado na sila. This is why, as we commend Senator Marcos for her efforts in ensuring this measure is given ample attention. We do so with the prayer of hope that by next year, we have already turned this dream into reality. Panawagan din po natin sa DBM, ibigay na natin ito sa ating mga senior citizens. Simple lamang po ang hangad ng panukalang ito. How much, or shall we say, how little of our budget will it entail? Katulad po ng nabanggit ng ating mahal na Senador, Senator Amy, 2.1 billion lamang po, no? Napakaliit nito para sa ating mga senior citizens. Kung kaya naman, bakit hindi natin sila pagbigyan? Iilan lamang naman po ang 80 and 90 years old senior citizens na lalo na yung mga umaabot ng 100 years old, no? Inuulit ko, simple lang naman ang mithiin ng panukalang ito, ang mai-advance na natin ang halagang ito bilang pagtanaw ng utang na loob sa lahat ng kontribusyon sa ating lipunan ng ating mga senior citizens. Ang panukalang ito po kasi ay bunga ng hiling na pakikiusap ng ating mga senior citizens ng pangamba ay hindi na sila umabot ng 100 years old. Ika nga po nila, aanhin pa ang damo kung patay na ang kabayo. Ang ating paniniwala po ay hindi na dapat pa pinaghihintay ang ating mga senior citizens na mabigyan ng kaunting ayuda sa kabanata ng kanilang buhay kung kailan mahina na sila at wala nang paghuhugutan pa ng pangtustos sa kanilang pangangailangan. There's no need to wait because of our 80 and 90 years old senior citizens deserve it without a doubt. Kaya again, Mr. President, ang aking taus-pusong pasasalamat sa sipag at tiyaga ng ating chairperson, Madam Amy Marcos, at maisasakatuparan na ang itong Centenarian Act na bagong version ngayon. Senator Amy, congratulations, at sa lahat ng ating mga colleagues, maraming salamat sa panukalang ito. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat, Senator Bong Revilla. Tama po kayo, napakasipag. Biro mo, lola na yan, super lola na yan, ang ating kababakang kasamahan, pero ang galaw parang millennial.
Lola na po,
Millennial ang galaw.
Lola na, Mr. President.
She's a lola already, yes.
Strike
Her
off.
children have a...
Gentlemanly, I am inspired to
She's a
urge
proud
you
Lola
to
na rin.
strike this off the record.
But the way she acts and conducts herself is like a millennial.
Knox.
So she can relate to
So it's a
everyone.
millennial Lola, Mr. President? Just kidding. Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy,
More power
and
to our sponsor.
we should all be happy for this very happy bill indeed for all the lolas and lolos in the country.
Maybe with the permission of the minority floor leader, we can amend it already today and approve it on second reading.
Are you ready to amend?
Not quite. Can we do it tomorrow?
Okay.
Dahil kasi
All right.
we have to formulate the balik lola pace po. Bukas kasi magpo-formulate pa tayo ng provision that makes it very clear that after the 80th birthday and before the 81st, the lolas are indeed qualified.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, and there being no member who wishes to interpolate and ask further questions, I move that we close the period of interpellations and debate. So move, Mr. President.
There be no objection to the motion. Motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2028. I so move, Mr. President.
There be no objection. Motion is approved.
Ask for a minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal
Of the 22nd session.
of the 22nd session, Wednesday, September 13, 2023, and consider the same as approved. So move, Mr.
There
President.
have been no objection, motion's approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
There have been no objection, we ask the Secretary to proceed with the reference of business.
Messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 12 September 2023, it adopted Senate Number 2019 as an amendment to House Number 227, instituting policies for the protection and welfare of caregivers and the practice of their profession.
Do the archives.
Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 13 September 2023, designated Representatives Enverga, Salceda, Salo, Emano, Plaza, Estrella, and Lee as conferees to the Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of House Number 8278 and 2243, Salt Industry.
To the Committee on Rules.
Bill on first reading, Senate Number 2440, an act defining the powers and functions of the Commission on Human Rights as a national human rights institution and for other purposes. Senator Padilla.
To the Committees on Justice, Human Rights, Civil Service, and Finance.
Resolution, proposed Senate Resolution 796, directing the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs to conduct an inquiry into the alleged presence and operation of a Shabu laboratory, heavily armed private army of extremist groups at the heavily guarded Sitio Kapihan, Barangay Sering, Socorro, Surigao del Norte, with the end in view of recommending legislative measures that will ensure the promotion and safeguarding the basic human rights and dignity of persons. Senator De La Rosa.
To the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
Committee reports. Committee Report 121 by the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations on multipropria investigation into the non-disclosure by and/or refusal of the Department of Health to release the details of the vaccine procurement contracts on the pretext of a supposedly existing non-disclosure agreement. Recommending its approval, sponsor Senator Tolentino.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
122, jointly by the Committees on Higher, Technical, and Vocational Education and Basic Education on Senate Number 2441 with Senators Revilla Jr., Villar M., Lapid, Go, Tulfo, Escudero, and Gatchalian as authors. An act mandating private higher education institutions to waive college entrance examination fees and charges of certain students qualified to apply for college admission. Recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Numbers 1407, 1672, 1679, 1708, and 2079. Taking into consideration House Number 5001, sponsor Senator Escudero.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
123, jointly by the Committees on Higher, Technical, and Vocational Education, Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship, Ways and Means, and Finance on Senate Number 2442 with Senators Lapid, Revilla Jr., Villar M., Villar C., Escudero, and Angayra as authors. An act establishing the Philippine Entrepreneurs Academy, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Numbers 1351, 1628, 2090, and 2229. Taking into consideration House Number 6473. Sponsor Senator Escudero.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
124, jointly by the Committee on Women, Children, and Family Relations and Gender Equality and Senate Number 2443 with Senators Ontiveros, Tulfo, Padilla, Cayetano P., and Marcos as authors. An act expanding the grounds for dissolution of marriage, instituting divorce, and setting the procedures thereof. Providing protections to the parties to the marriage and its common children. Amending for this purpose Executive Order 209 or the Family Code of the Philippines. Recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Numbers 147, 213, 237, 554, 555, 1198, and 2047. Sponsor Senator Ontiveros.
To the calendar for ordinary business. There's additional reference of business.
Additional reference of business, resolutions, proposed Senate Resolution 797, directing the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality to immediately conduct an investigation into allegations of systematic rape, sexual abuse, trafficking, forced labor, and forced marriage of children in the context of cult-like activities among the members of the Socorro Bayanihan Services, Inc. in Sitio Kapihan, Socorro, Surigao del Norte, introduced by Senator Ontiveros.
Committees on Public Order, Dangerous Drugs, Women and Children, Family Relations.
798, calling for the appropriate committee of the Senate of the Republic to conduct an investigation into the continuing enforced disappearances of environmental defenders, the latest victims being Jonila Castro and Jed Tamano. Senator Ontiveros.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
799, directing the Senate Committee on Games and Amusement to undertake an inquiry to review existing laws and regulations governing casino, customers in the Philippines. Senator Tulfo.
To the Committee on Games and Amusements. Majority Leader, I'd like to also put on record, if I may, that I would like to be made a co-author of and co-sponsor of the Centenarians Act.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I'm already an author, kaya thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
President, thank
With
you.
the permission,
and,
of course, of the sponsor and the authors.
Yes, Mr. President, let it be placed on record that Senator Amy Marcos is nodding her head.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, September 19, 2023. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, I'd like to thank our colleagues for a very productive day today. There being none, I move that the Senate session be adjourned until 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday, September 19, 2023. Have a safe and good evening, everyone.